Welcome, travelers, to another episode of the Time Travel Trio podcast. I'm Jen.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Hi.
And we're
the Time Travel Trio.
When did we start doing that?
Pretty early on.
Pretty early.
Yeah, first year, for sure.
Yeah. Good times in the city.
Good times at El Royale.
Yeah.
Reverse.
In theaters now, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
When does that come out?
I don't know.
Soonish.
Who knows?
I know. All right. So, maybe you know, maybe you don't. I don't know.
That's right.
Our podcast is ending, if you have not heard. We have just a few more episodes left. We've each picked one show to do as our final choice, and then we will do a finale episode kind of talking about all our stuff that we've done, and that will be episode 80, released on Halloween.
Yes. Until then, we are at episode 78, and I have chosen the BBC show sci-fi comedy called Red Dwarf. It's a show that I've been watching pretty much my entire life. I can't remember not watching it, so I've always watched this show.
Okay. So the description says it's the adventures of the last human alive and his friends stranded 3 million years into deep space on the mining ship Red Dwarf. I had never heard of the show before I met you.
Yeah, I don't know how popular it is. I've just always watched it.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's a popular show just because I don't really ever hear about it.
Yeah.
And it's still on. But it's kind of like if... How would you describe it?
It's like
if,
4 idiots in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Like if the entire ship was just 4 idiots.
Yeah. Like Doctor Who meets...
Star Trek, yeah. Meets, like...
I don't want to say Big Bang Theory,
Three Stooges, I would say.
Yeah.
It's pretty slapsticky at times, but...
Maybe the honeymooners, like always scheming, kind of too. Because they're always trying to scheme something, it feels like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd never seen this show.
I've heard of the show only because there was this graphic online that was going around a few years ago, which was like sci-fi timelines. Like basically, imagine ones of all like the major sci-fi movies took place on one timeline. So it goes like from everything from like 20,000 years, and then they have like Alien and Blade Runner, and then there's nothing for like a millennia, and then they have like. This guy awakens on the Red Dwarf to find himself in like where with like an evolved cat, and I was like, "What movie is this?" And I looked it up, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, Red Dwarf is a TV show." But I couldn't find any episodes online, so I never really watched anything until this episode.
That's so funny. Like the show was on PBS growing up, and my sisters loved it, and so I watched it, and. I must have seen every episode because over the years I would buy it on DVD, but I never really watched them again until after like college. I was like living in LA, and I was like, let me actually rewatch the show because I don't know if I've seen every episode. I just remember watching it all the time, and I pretty much had seen every episode. I was like, oh, I remember this one, I remember that one, and so yeah, I just over the course of being on PBS, I like watched every episode of the original run.
Yeah, well, in true BBC fashion, the show's been on for 30 years and there's only 75 episodes.
Yes.
So, which like is a lot, but also not really.
Yeah, well, the show went on for 8 seasons originally, from 88 to 99, and each season had like 6 to 8 episodes. And they ended the show, they had a finale, and then they brought it back in like 2009. And ever since then, they've been doing another like 5 or whatever episodes each series, as they call them, each season, every couple of years after that. So, yeah. Okay.
So obviously you love it since you're very nostalgic.
Yeah, it's hard for me to be unbiased in this review.
Don't worry, that's what we're here for.
Yes.
Hyde, what did you think?
I enjoyed it. I mean, as I said, I think a little earlier this week we were talking, I said I felt like I needed a translator the first episode I watched it. I'm like, they're speaking English, but and this must be like what it's like to be like a Spanish speaker hearing like an English person talk. Like,
yeah, it's like I understand most of the words that you say,
yes.
But a lot of times you speak really fast and I don't catch it all or the context, especially since it's dated and sometimes they're like topical references, which doesn't make sense.
Well, what's hard because it's written in the 80s and it's set in the future, so the references are either outdated or made up. So like you don't know which one's which. So like sometimes they'll mention like a model and you're like, is that someone? Like no, she's from the future in their world.
That's
but then
true.
they mention like a movie and you're like, oh, that movie was from like before the 80s or like in the 80s. So it's throwing you for a loop each time.
Right. So, like, the only way you would really get the full context of that is if you were watching it probably when it was on.
And you're
you
British.
Were and British and, like,
Yeah.
super aware of pop culture.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I didn't dislike it, but I also don't ever want to watch this show.
It's not your cup of tea.
And I like British shows. It was really funny because we were watching this, and then we also watched Great British Bake Off, and then we were playing Lego Harry Potter. So it was like a very British day that we were having. But which, like, by the way, that's our typical Saturday. But I get it, and there are things I like about it, and I definitely can appreciate it for what it is, because there aren't a lot or very many or any shows that are really like this and just willing to just go like balls to the walls for comedy. And I think that's great, because a lot of times we get, like, no offense for people who like this, because I have friends who like the show, but like something like Big Bang Theory, which is just so played out and repetitive that, like, they have comedic moments, but
they're going to be in the apartment, they're going to mention flags, and they're going to mention some equation. And
exactly, and Sheldon's going to wear a shirt and whatever, and, like, I'm sorry, my friend Hator
Bazinga!
loves that show. Yes, my friend Hator loves it, so, like, I'm sorry, not that he's listening to this, but I do know that people love, I mean, that show has been on for
15
for
years.
a long time. So, like, that's the only,
and
that's why I kind of
like,
equate it to this. But
easily 3 times the number of episodes as Red Dwarf does.
Right, exactly. So, like, to that degree, I do appreciate that there's only a certain number of episodes per quote-unquote season.
Yeah.
Just because they use their best jokes for those episodes.
Yeah.
And that's nice. But it's very, very, very male-dominant, obviously. And just, it doesn't feel, like, even though, yes, it's, I mean, 2 of the characters are black, but it doesn't really feel like it's diverse. Do you know what I mean?
I'm just saying. Gender-wise.
Gender, I guess more gender-wise.
Yeah,
because I do appreciate that, I guess, but I don't know.
There's nowhere to insert yourself. There's no character you can say, this is me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so this person.
Yeah, it's this show's hard because for me, I love, like, the original run. That's where it holds a special place in my heart. And I do watch the new seasons, but I'm like, oh, this doesn't strike the same chord with me. So I understand what you're going through, because now you're seeing this new show, well, to you a new show. And so I had the same feeling with the new seasons. I was like, okay, why are they doing this? I was happy with the way it ended, and it was funny, and it's in my head. It's like a nostalgic thing.
Right.
But to watch it now, it's like, now it kind of feels like it's, all right, well, why are you guys still doing this?
Right.
Yeah.
What's the purpose? Purpose. There we go.
Yes.
Of it still continuing today. Like, is it bringing more comedy to this genre? I mean, there isn't a lot of sci-fi comedy shows. I don't.
It's not true.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of sci-fi comedy shows.
Yeah, this show it goes full sci-fi. Like, in these episodes, they go full into, like, the time travel aspects and, like, the morality and all the choice and all that stuff.
Which I actually really liked. Yeah, I really liked that aspect of it. Like, when they were going out somewhere on adventures, I think is maybe when the episodes were stronger. At least, obviously, I haven't seen a lot of it.
Yeah.
I've seen, like, 3 episodes of what we watched, but I appreciate it. I can definitely see how people love this show.
Yeah, they do a lot of different things. They do try to make it less male dominated. Like, in one of the episodes, the computer Holly is turned into a woman because I think the actor behind the scenes, he left, and so the character, he was like, I'm a program, so it doesn't matter. So he went through a sex change and became a female Holly. And then later on in the show, Kachansky, they recasted her and brought it back. And she joined the show as, like, a regular recurring cast member, like the last couple seasons or whatever.
That's good.
Yeah, so they try to do things, but for the most part, yeah, it's just the 4 dudes in a ship in space.
Yeah, but I do, I will say this, though. I do actually really like the characters that they have. I think they're all really interesting in their own ways to watch. Obviously, Dave is the hero. But
Dave Lister, played by Chris Berry.
And they're a little bit...
Yeah.
They're a little bit stereotyped.
Craig Charles, sorry.
For sure. Okay, you're right over there?
Yeah. Okay. Chris Berry is the guy that was in Tomb Raider.
Okay.
Oh!
He was the butler.
You're right!
Oh my god, you're so right. That's what he's... Lara Croft.
He's so close to his own trilogy.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that is crazy. Okay. No, I just had a moment too. The characters themselves are a little bit stereotyped at times, I think, especially Kat. But granted, I'll give it a little bit of a pass because it was the 80s.
Right.
Yeah, they have their own shtick,
Yeah.
and they definitely rely on that a lot in terms of the character aspects of it all. And they react in specific ways that you can kind of predict, but yeah, I mean like hearing Lister with this heavy Liverpool accent, I love, and
he's he's a cool character, and I like him. I almost would. I wish I could kind of see and I didn't watch it, so maybe they do this, but almost like some flashbacks early on of life before everyone disappeared.
No, you don't really see much of.
Not really.
Yeah, the most flashbacks you see are in Stasis League, the first episode that we review. Yeah, you do learn about how he was born, and that also involves time travel, but we're not going to cover that in this episode. We have a lot to cover already. So
anyway, so I think overall
he's his own dad. Spoilers.
Oh, he went full predestination.
Yeah, they went there. Yeah,
that's all right. We'll need to discuss that. But so I think overall, majority like it, and I would recommend it to someone who likes this genre. Yeah,
we're talking to Jen's uncle, and I forgot that he'd never heard of it, and I was like, oh yeah, I think you would like that. There are certain people that you can kind of tell with
people who really
love BBC,
BBC and British shows for sure.
Yeah,
because it does have a lot of that. But people who like sci-fi too. So.
Yeah. But yeah, just to give anyone who doesn't know, and if you're still here 12 minutes in,
sorry.
Basically Dave Lister is the lowest run of this ship. He's a space janitor pretty much, and he brings a cat on board, and they find him. They find him out, and so they put him in stasis. And his cat runs away into the hole for no one actually kills the cat or anything like that. And while he's in stasis, the whole crew dies, and the ship's AI leaves him in stasis for 3 million years until it's safe for him to come out. And by then, he's 3 million years from Earth, and he's in the future, last human alive. And they resurrect his bunkmate, who he hates, Rimmer, as a hologram. They can only support one hologram at a time, so it's him. And the last surviving person of the cat race, they explain that in another episode. But he's there. He's running on the ship doing his own cat stuff.
Because his cat that got away evolved.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pregnant, and it created this whole cat society that had Lister as their god. Except they called him Cloister. And it was the first cat was immaculately conceived to have the first children because it was not married, in cat world. So yeah, whatever. That's neither here nor there. So yeah, that's the setup, and they get into the 3 million years in the future on this big ship, and they just get into capers. And at some point, they find an android named Crichton, and so that's the main cast.
Right. Okay. There you go. So we covered 3 different episodes. These are only 30 minutes each, and they all cover kind of different-ish sort of time travel sort of concepts. So the first one we'll talk about is Stasis League, which Matt mentioned, which is season 2, episode 4. So I think this summary is... Oh, it's not that long. Okay. Rimmer, Lister, and Kat find a time barrier called Stasis Leak on floor 16, and it takes them back in time on Red Dwarf 3 million years earlier. Rimmer and Lister try to change the past, which puts either Rimmer or Kochanski into suspended animation so one of them doesn't die in the radioactive disaster.
Yeah, so that's the basic thing. They, in terms of, I don't have a clip for this one, just so we can talk about it. But yeah, basically they have to decide if they can change things and all that stuff. But it's actually kicked off by seeing Rimmer talk to his hologram self in the past. And so that kind of, they learned about the stasis leak by reading Rimmer's diary from the time. Because he thought it was like a hallucination. But he wrote it down still saying that like the hologram told him that it was a stasis leak on floor 16. Mm-hmm. So they know about it by reading it from the past. So it already creates like a causal loop. Mm-hmm. And this episode kind of has that all in there, because what we see happen 3 million years ago already happened. In this episode, everything didn't really change. It's kind of just how it always happened. Mm-hmm. Except only Rimmer saw it, and he thought he was going crazy. So it didn't really change anything, per se.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess the kind of question... I don't necessarily want to say the question of the show, because the show kind of just stays within its, like, episode of logic.
Right. Whatever in each of that episode, it kind of stays in the episode.
Right. So in this one, I guess the question is, has anything changed? Not really. I mean, we definitely need to talk about duplication, but the stasis leak is how they travel. So
It's a door it's a glowing door.
right, it's a moment in time that's been frozen.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is cool. I like that they. I mean, it was very much like. I don't know. I don't want to say crude humor, but like lame humor. That
It
they
gets
go
very
in
slapstick
and
and
it's yeah.
It's a men's shower.
They're like they're in the men's shower. I appreciate that it was a men's shower. I will
Yeah,
say it easily could have been a women's shower and would have been kind of gross. But I'm glad it wasn't. So yeah, so they go through, and that's kind of how they travel. And then when they go back, do they have to go through the same way?
They do, yeah.
Okay.
You see them go in and out. They basically walk into the wall. So I think anyone could have accidentally, if someone was taking a shower and they slipped and fell into the wall, they would have been turned to dust because they would have gone through and then into the future where they were turned to dust. But thankfully, no one did. They didn't really. So that's the thing too. Like they never close the stasis leak. It never closes. They just decide to not use it ever again or ever bring it up again.
But the only reason they can come back through and be whole is because
they're from there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like someone from the past can't go to the future.
They were basically
the future
aged
can
3
go to the
million
past.
years.
Yeah, essentially.
Going through it.
Oh, okay.
But they're just going back in time, so they're fine. But if you were trying to go into the future, because of how that particular time travel would work, you would deteriorate because your body, basically like in Time Machine, when the guys left out of the circle.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, the time machine.
Yeah, yeah. But there is another question because Lister thinks he wants to go back and save Kachansky, who's the girl that he loves. But because he sees a picture of her with him with the goatee being married. So he's like, no, look, I go back there, I marry her. And then he finds out that it's actually him from his future. It's a double future Lister that at some point, 5 years in our Lister's future, finds a way to go back for good, or in a different way to actually marry her. One thing they didn't mention is that in episode 1, he sees a pile of dust and it's Kachansky. So, I don't know. I guess she didn't actually die. Maybe Holly was wrong. Whatever. But essentially, we're led to believe that he goes back and saves Kachansky and it's just him in the future.
Right. So, at one point at the end of this episode, there's 3 Listers and 3 Rimmers.
Yeah.
Right.
That's really funny. I like that scene.
Yeah.
Because they're all in the same room, and the old Rimmer is like thinks he's going crazy, and then at the end, the third Rimmer comes up, is like, "Now here's where things get complicated." And the original Lister Rimmer just freaks out and yells at everyone.
So there's like past, present, and future.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And the future ones they have a goatee and a mustache to delineate themselves. I guess they're more refined or whatever.
It's the old Star Trek alternate dimension.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, it's evil Kirk. He's got a mustache and a goatee. It's like, what? Which is, by the way, my favorite way to say someone's like from a different timeline. Like,
Right?
if this timeline,
Yes.
it's like, I don't care.
The darkest timeline.
It is the darkest timeline if you watch Community.
Right, exactly. I love it. I hope that trope never dies.
I know.
I know.
That's pretty funny.
This episode does kind of illustrate one of my issues with this show in terms of how it uses time travel, because the future Lister says, like, in 5 years' time, you'll find a way to go back, and then you'll like do this. You'll experience what I'm experiencing. But in season 7, they never do that. So like they never really pay off those kind of breadcrumbs they leave behind. It's almost just like they kind of forget about it. Like, all right, here's what we need for this episode, this storyline. Have some jokes and then move on.
It's very sitcom-y that way.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is. And that kind of goes with what I meant of the episode kind of stays within its own box. And it's kind of a bummer, actually, that the show doesn't carry on some things, because they easily, it seems like they easily could have, and it would have been
they do big things.
rewarding.
Yeah, so like those little plot things don't really carry through, but sometimes, like at one point the ship gets destroyed and they have to go on a smaller ship, that carries through. Like, so there are big changes that carry through, like a character leaving, or like at one point Rimmer leaves the show for a little while, and then he rejoins the cast, kind of unexplained why he goes back.
Mm-hmm.
But there are
Really?
there are some things that are actually consistent. Yeah. Well, in one season, the whole crew gets reborn. They get nanomachines rebuild everyone, and that whole season they're on the full ship with the whole cast and crew. So it's like the whole ship is now full. That's a whole season where that's a thing. So there are like big things that change, but for the most part, yeah, these little 5 years from now, they don't come back.
Okay. Hyde, what did you think of this episode?
This Stasis League felt very much like a college adventure me and the Wolfpack would have gotten into. And I think I said this to Matt. Like, this was like something where it's like, if they discovered a stasis leak, I was like, what would we have used it for? Oh my gosh, to go, like, marry some girl, like, hit on some girl, or whatever. Like, we totally would have done that. And, like, it going to the men's bathroom, as, like, crude as it is, it's like, yep, that just seems like how life would be. We would just be like, oh, it's a men's bathroom. We'd be walking around like Pepperdine. Like, it's like, and then I would find out, like, oh my gosh, like, I feel like if Wolfman was with us, he would have been Cat, and he would have attacked that woman over the fox on her. It just felt very like, these are my friends. Oh my gosh, this is my friends if we had the power to walk in time. Like, we would totally use it for this, something like this. Even us getting to it and realizing the ultimate disappointment of it's already happened, but not really, because you don't get to experience it. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, Jen noticed that his Lister's friend Peterson is actually the father Weasley.
Arthur.
Yeah, Arthur Weasley. She was like, Weasley, and I was like, oh, whoa, that is him.
Does like Britain only have like 20 actors?
Yes. Yes, they do.
That was pretty funny.
That is funny though.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we have the episodes to go through, so we can move on. We covered the basics of that episode, and we'll kind of summarize everything, I guess, after the fact.
Okay, so the next episode is called Time Slides, which is season 3, episode 5.
Yes.
Right? Is this the next one you wanted to cover?
Yes.
Okay. The developing fluid that Crichton uses to process... Is that how you say it?
No, it's Crichton, but whatever.
Okay, well, there's an R in there. Crichton.
Don't you Cockney?
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
He uses to process old photographs, mutates, and the photographs come alive. The Red Dwarf crew find that they go into the photograph, and Lister finds that the photographs allow them to go back in time, and he plans on changing history so that he doesn't end up marooned in deep space. So it's like the Daniel Panabaker movie, but if they actually could go in the
into the pictures,
photos.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I actually have a clip of this if you want to.
What movie was that?
Yeah.
Time...
I want to see Time Slides, but that's this episode name.
Time
Oh my
Slides.
god. No, I'm gonna have to
I
look.
can't remember either.
I'm gonna have to look.
It was hold on, I feel like I know
it's
this.
not quantum something. Time lapse.
Time lapse.
It's close.
That was yours.
Yeah, that's pretty close to the
That is
to
pretty
Time
close.
Slides.
Yeah.
But we actually have a clip of them after they discovered the technology. It's basically kind of what we said, but they get
We've got ourselves a smegging time machine. So we can go anywhere we want, absolutely anywhere.
Providing we have a photograph of it.
So if one of us had, say, a photograph of a female-only naturist beach in Acapulco full of bronzed, naked, uninhibited teenage temptresses, we could go there for a holiday.
I suppose.
Crichton, get my photo album.
The thing is, we can't move outside the confines of the photograph. What we see is all we get.
Meaning?
Meaning we can't get a picture of Earth and go back there. We wouldn't be able to move outside the frame of the photograph.
Believe me, this beach shot in Acapulco, you wouldn't want to move outside the frame of the photograph.
So it's useless then?
No, not entirely useless. Think of the famous people we could meet, the famous places we could go.
We could go to Dallas in November 1963. Stand on the grassy knoll and shout, "Duck!" I'm sorry, I must have bypassed my good taste chip.
The possibilities are enormous. They're mind-numbing. We could go back in time and avert major disasters.
What do you mean, like persuade Dustin Hoffman not to make Ishtar?
What about determinism then? What about causality? You can't just mess about with history.
We'll just do something small.
There's no such thing as small when you're talking about changing time.
I'm only talking about changing things so that we don't get marooned in space.
Such as?
If I can go back and fix it so that I don't join the Space Corps, don't sign up with Red Dwarf, then I can create an alternative existence to normal existence back on Earth. I won't be stuck with your ugly mush for the next 3 million years.
She would be great at guesting on this podcast.
Yeah.
Cool. So...
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the rules of it. Except in this episode, they can change things. So, and we see them kind of vanish in and out after they make certain big changes. The Lister goes back and talks to his younger self when he's 17, makes him rich, and then Rimmer tries to dissuade him, but that new Lister doesn't remember him. But he actually would, because that younger Lister actually talked to him. He commented on his H on his forehead.
Right.
So like he would have actually remembered him at some point. Maybe like he forgot, but he actually did talk to him. But
did you want to mention though that they made a comment about Dallas?
Oh yeah, in the next episode
they kind of preview.
Yeah, in the next episode they actually do go to Dallas on the grassy knoll, which we'll get into. But But yeah, in the rules for this episode, they can kind of like go into any photograph, and Lister goes to Hitler and he beats him up, and then he looks at a newspaper and he's like in the newspaper at that time.
I liked the concept of that, and I liked that they could only go within the confines of the photograph.
Right.
I thought that was an interesting roadblock of it, instead of just jumping in and out and going wherever, and then you're at that place. So it's like, I could see that being like a superpower or something that like almost like Jumper.
Oh yeah.
You know, which I guess it is like Jumper.
First of all, a very rare Jumper reference.
Yeah.
A very rare Ishtar reference. Excuse me.
Good point. Fair enough. I just want to know, we've referenced Time Lapse, Jumper, and Ishtar.
Okay, but Jumper totally applies in this case.
No, it's true.
Yeah,
I'm hating on the reference.
Yeah, they jump in and out of the frame of the picture. He jumps out as he's like, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Only God should have the power to be everywhere at once.
Yes, exactly. Except in Jumper, he can go anywhere.
They could theoretically find a picture of Earth and fly their spaceship into the picture, and then they can run around Earth. But
their spaceship wouldn't fit in the photo.
Yeah, well, they can like project it on like a moon, or I don't know. You know what I mean? There's like they never bring that up.
But there's no light in space.
But wouldn't it only be able to like live in that one frame of like oh yeah. Earth. Yeah, I
know, but you know, again, this doesn't really come up because it's more just for jokes and kind of for them to mess with each other, and then at the end of the day, Rimmer messes up because he's a failure in all aspects of his life, and so he even fails at giving himself all the millions of dollars.
He did a good job of helping Laura Croft, though.
That's true.
Yes.
So I'm going to say all aspects. Yeah,
in the future, he does.
I actually liked. Even though I know you say he's a fucktard or whatever, but I liked that. By trying to help himself, he sort of closed the loop.
Yeah, right.
You know, but it also goes back to, okay, but then who actually conceived of the idea of the, whatever the thing was called? The
tension chute.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, yeah, because his bunkmate was Thicky Holden, who actually did invent it, but probably sooner now with the change in the timeline because he like gave him the idea when he was a kid. But basically, yeah, he set things right all over again.
Unless he always did that.
Yeah. So maybe yeah. If that was the case, then he always figured it out. Except this is the part of the timeline where it changes before it recorrects to be what it always had been.
Oh, right, true, because he is alive.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. At the end of the episode, Rimmer's alive again. They don't know why he's alive, and he immediately kills himself accidentally.
Yeah,
which is pretty funny.
I did appreciate that they kind of mentioned that you can't just change time, but that they wanted an alternate timeline.
Right.
Conversations like that, most movies don't say that. Mm-hmm. They just say, oh, I just want to change things. They don't say, I want an alternate timeline. Yeah,
it's funny that in a comedy you're having such hard sci-fi. Well, there are more serious sci-fi shows that are like, time, paradox, temporal management.
Our plane had some turbulence, and now we're 5 years in the future.
Flashes of light, New show Manifest.
Yes, we are watching Manifest because it's terrible and wonderful at the same time, and I can't look away.
Side note, there was a tweet I saw from a writer who said, I'm watching Manifest, and oh my gosh, it's one of the worst shows I've ever seen. I can't wait for next week.
It is genuinely one of the worst written shows I've seen in a long time, and I do this podcast. But it's so bad that somehow it kind of works.
Yeah,
the characters are shit, and the writing is atrocious. But like, I'm genuinely excited to see the next episode just because I want to see how bad can they go before they get canceled by ABC.
Yeah.
How bad can they cross that line? Because they've already gotten to the point in the pilot of like they hear voices and I know we're not talking about Manifest, but like they hear voices in their heads and they like psychically get called to the plane and then they watch it explode.
Oh my
it's
gosh.
A whole. You need to see it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're not going to answer any of the time travel questions. They're just going to be like, all right, we have these powers now. What can we do with the powers?
The plane itself is alive.
Yes.
Well, the voiceover when the plane explodes is like, whatever did this didn't want to be found out. Because, like, they're standing by the airplane, and then it explodes, and they're like...
Definitely aliens, but they don't want to say aliens, because then people will not watch their shitty show.
It's either aliens or God.
It has...
Oh gosh.
Because then she
Either
goes to
way,
a
that
church
was-
at one point and reads the Bible verse.
It's
She thinks she's chosen.
you need to see this.
I have
you
to
need
watch
to
this
see
show.
Yeah. Anyways.
Oh my god.
Anyways,
yeah, back to time
watch-
slides.
We're not going to get to, obviously, our podcast is ending, so we're not going to get to Manifest if it does eventually have time travel. So just know that I will
We're
be
aware.
watching this show until it inevitably gets canceled. I will be surprised if it goes a whole one
They
season.
can always tweet us, you know.
Yeah.
Beyond.
Please do.
That's true.
Please tell us. I will watch with you. We'll tweet together. Okay. Anyway, back to Red Dwarf.
Yeah, no.
Sorry.
I wanted to do this episode because it's a different method of time travel, and they actually change things as opposed to time or stasis leak, where like we kind of see how it all happened.
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah,
This is a very
I liked
Gilligan's
it.
Island type episode.
It's a very Gilligan's Island-esque show.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, that's the kind of humor. It's like Gilligan's Island with Doctor Who. That's kind of.
Oh
that's
yeah,
how it
that's
feels.
good. That's a good. Yeah.
Go team, high five.
What up?
Yeah, this episode it has some Hitler jokes. They kind of like they get his briefcase and they kind of like
time travel does.
yeah they poke fun at him and like Lister beats him up and they find the bomb, the attempted assassination plot where they kick it back and do the picture.
that was pretty funny.
Pretty funny,
It's
yeah.
like, oh, I've got this briefcase. Yeah, that was pretty. There were definitely moments that the humor was enjoyable.
Yeah.
For sure. It was very slapstick, but I did enjoy it sometimes. But yeah, sometimes it was just too much. Where I was like, all right, I'm tired.
Yeah, it definitely leans on the slapstick. There is some like character jokes, and they have just like basic sitcom scenarios and all that stuff. I did want to mention the word smeg. I don't know if you guys just didn't pick it up, but smeg is their fake curse word in the show. It's like frack or or whatever.
But frack is great.
I know. But yeah, so smeg is like their shit or the fuck. So like smeg head, what the smeg. So like it's the way they can cuss on the
Okay.
show. So whenever you smeg is their word that they created for the show. It's not like a
The
British slang.
The only thing that bothers me is it's so close to smog.
Ah,
Smaug.
Smaug. I've lived my life knowing smeg as like a reference point. So
Okay.
The smeg.
The smeg.
Yeah.
The smeg instead of the
It's
meg.
the
Smeg, yeah.
sci-fi version of
the
the
meg.
meg.
Yeah.
Oh man.
A time traveling shark.
Ugh.
Come on, Sci-Fi Channel, just do
They
it.
have
Well, there is
Sharknado.
Sharknado. We're not going to get to that either,
oh,
but there is a
gosh.
Sharknado time travel movie
That was
that
right.
if our podcast was still going on, we would definitely cover. So know that, again, we will watch it together, and maybe we'll live tweet it or something. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do that.
But yeah, I
So-
think that's it for this episode.
Cool.
For the interest of time, we can just move on.
Let's move on to the third episode called Ticket to Ride,
She's got a ticket to ride.
which is a reference to Indian food
And the Beatles, yes.
and the Beatles.
Yes.
Because it's British, yeah. That's
Yeah, Lister loves curry, he loves Indian food, and they're out of food.
Really genuinely made me hungry how much he talked about curry
Yeah.
in this episode.
I forgot. So this episode begins with a recap of the season 6 finale, and I wanted to address it because it's kind of hard to get around it. But it also involves time travel. It also involves time travel.
Right.
So basically, at the end of season 6, they find the same time device that they use in this episode, except right when they find it, their future selves appear and want it because theirs is broken, and they're basically assholes.
Time travel made that guy a real asshole.
Yeah, so they throw caution to the wind and say, "Give us the device or we'll kill you." And of course, that would be a paradox, but they do it anyway. So this episode begins after that, and the clip I have is Lister explaining all that sci-fi stuff, and I kind of wanted to include it because it's funny and it also illustrates the writers how they feel about time travel and all the rules we're talking about. So
Cool.
Now, just recently, we came across a craft piloted by ourselves from 15 years into the future. We had a bit of an argument, and they attacked us. See attached.
Another lock.
Incoming message.
Either you give us access to the data we require, or be prepared to be blasted out of the sky.
We were no match. They killed us. And destroyed everything on board ship, including the time drive, which meant there was no time drive for them to have in the future, to bring back into the past to destroy the future of their past selves in the present. Put simply, by killing us, they killed themselves, because once we were dead, it was impossible for us to become them in the future and return in time to kill ourselves in the past, even though it was the present.
Have you been trying to explain about our future selves again, sir?
I just thought I'd give it one more go.
That's the third camera this week. The machines just can't take it, sir.
But I'm only trying to explain why Starbug's damaged despite the timeline being erased. Because this reality is unstable, and anomalies have merged from both dimensions to cope with the paradox.
Garbled, confusing, and quite frankly, duller than an in-flight magazine produced by Air Belgium. Now just state our position and explain we're down on supplies.
So I love that clip because Crichton's basically saying what the writers want to tell you. They're like, look, here's the rules. We told you what we're going to explain, and then just forget about it and move on. That's kind of their
mindset. The reality
mindset.
is unstable is pretty much the most explanation that we're going to get.
Yeah.
I think, like, something like that is appreciated more by, like, the three of us than probably, like, most people who watch this show, I think, honestly.
Yeah.
Just because it's, we actually can follow what they're talking about, and then it's funny.
Like, probably half the audience, like, tuned it out and was just like, okay, he's saying a lot of sci-fi jargon.
Mm-hmm.
He's going the Bruce Davidson route from Displacement.
Yeah.
He's just like
Temporal
time waves.
Yeah.
What do you call him from X-Men?
Senator Kelly.
Senator Kelly.
Senator Kelly.
I'm Senator Kelly. By the way, I saw Bruce Davidson.
Yeah, did you say that too?
The Pasadena. No, I did not get to. I did not. That would be so terrible. He'd be like, "Who the heck?"
Yeah, you saw him in a play, right?
I saw him play at the Pasadena Playhouse Native Gardens. He was very good in it. He's a very good actor. He's even good at Senator Kelly. I just like making fun of Bruce Davidson for some reason.
It's funny.
Yeah. So I didn't want to hark on that aspect of the show too much because it is kind of just they did it and it kind of didn't really pay off that much.
Yeah, but I do appreciate though that he talked about how it doesn't make sense for them to have killed the versions of them, their future versions to have killed the past versions because it negates everything.
Yeah.
So I did appreciate them at least acknowledging that.
Yeah, and this may be the case. I don't remember exactly, but I think this is the season where Kachansky does appear because at one point they're flying through space and they see this weird like orb, and it's an alternate dimension where Kachansky was the one that got caught for the cat. And so she's the last human in her reality, and Lister is now a hologram, and she gets trapped in the main universe. So that's how she joins the cast. And I think that anomaly, this paradox, may be what caused that. I don't remember if that's the reason for it.
Interesting.
So that may be what allowed her to join their universe. So that may be it. But yeah, basically now they're in a universe where it's unstable because of the paradox. But this episode,
right,
that sets up this time device that they had.
You want me to read this? Okay.
Yeah.
In the aftermath of the battle with their future selves, the crew resurrected from the dead due to time paradoxes, and Lister is depressed when he learns the curry supplies were destroyed in the battle. But all hell breaks loose yet again when Lister uses Crichton, so it's spelled this correctly this time.
That's correct, yeah.
Sparehead 2, it's called, to take them back into time to get some curries from Earth, only to change the assassination of JFK and create an alternate dimension.
So
I liked this episode. Okay, of the three, I definitely liked this one the most. I was the most invested in it.
This was my favorite of the three we watched.
I had to do this episode because no American show would ever touch this subject.
That's so true.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. At the end of the episode, they grab the version of JFK from the alternate dimension and bring him back to kill himself.
Yeah,
which
as the second shooter.
As the second shooter, which as a fan of time travel, I really, really loved. Like a weird amount of love for that. But also, like, as an American, it's such a sin.
It is. You feel dirty for laughing at it.
Oh, I can't laugh at that, but that's so good.
Well, this episode came out in 1997, so I watched the show probably when I was like around 10-ish or whatever, so over the course, like, I was young when I saw this, so for me that was just like normal. I was like, oh yeah, JFK is going to be assassinated by himself.
Yeah.
You know.
I think it's pretty great, though, because it, like, closes the loop.
Yeah.
So he's done, but...
It's funny, I think Lister, when he explains it to JFK in the cop car, he's just like, it'll drive the conspiracy theorists nuts.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. It does know when to laugh, this show. I do appreciate that. It does have pretty decent timing for a lot of the jokes. But I think my big thing, though, is just it so easily they could do anything with this time travel, with these concepts, and just really broaden it. But because the rules are so sloppy and messy from one episode to the next, and even sometimes within an episode, it's so hard for me to, like, say that I really love this.
Yeah, I definitely have a line between how much I love the show and how much I don't like the time travel.
Right.
Like, for me, it's maybe the biggest disparity between how much I enjoy something and the time travel rating. just because it's hard for me to, you know, like now that I'm in a time travel podcast, I like think about these things. As a kid, obviously, I didn't think about the stuff. I just enjoyed the show.
Wasn't it nice back then?
Yeah, simpler times.
God, can't wait to get a time travel movie. I do like that they talked about causality
Yes.
in this episode, which obviously was kind of important here in this context,
Right.
but at least they mentioned it.
It's also crazy. I mean, just the fact that this happens because they wanted curry is
It's
so
pretty
Yes.
funny.
and when after JFK like closes the loop on himself, they get upset. Lister gets upset because he gets to ask where he got the curry. Like, there's just like little things like that.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, 4 years before this episode came out, in a clip that we played early in this episode, they talk about, oh, this is not in good taste, and then they literally go there, which is so funny. It's really, really funny, and it sounds dark, but when you actually watch it, it's done with such irreverence that like you can't help but laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, there's even like Three Stooges moments with Lee Harvey Oswald as he's like hanging from the window and like being launched out.
Right.
And
It's
he's,
like a Looney Tunes cartoon. It's
Yeah.
pretty funny. I liked that. I wanted to talk about that too, of how they had to kind of keep changing positions,
Right,
because
they
like
were.
at first they didn't want to run into their past selves when they first time jumped or whatever to this day,
the fifth floor.
to the fifth floor, but by doing that they had to like move where Oswald is, and then it just kept, but then he missed, and it was like just kind of, it was silly, but I did appreciate that with the time travel of like trying to actually do it right.
Yeah,
Right.
they had to orchestrate the assassination of JFK, which for a plot of a British sci-fi comedy, I'm all about.
Yeah.
I think it also is interesting. There's on YouTube, you can watch clips of Ticket to Ride with no laugh track, like Ticket to Ride, no laugh track, and it's so interesting to see like how differently it plays without an audience laughing. Like, it's still very funny, but it definitely feels even darker without a laugh track. Because then it's like when you ever see like, it's like, you know how like they have those clips online like Friends with no laugh track, and it's just like Ross freaking out.
I know what you're talking about.
Or like Seven, the movie Seven, or like
With a laugh track?
with a laugh track, or like Silence of the Lambs with a laugh track.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing Silence of the Lambs, and he's like doing the basket scene, and there's a laugh track, and I'm laughing because this laugh track is going.
That's
He's just
so
like,
funny.
put the lotion on, and the audience laughs, and like starts applauding.
That's so funny.
You're like, oh my god.
It really does make a
So good.
difference.
Yeah.
It does.
I mean, at some point in the show, they drop the laugh track for like a season or two, and then because they make it more like a single cam sitcom.
Right.
Okay.
But yeah, for the most part, this show is like built with a laugh track, kind of into its like DNA.
Yeah. I mean, I like the Big Bang Theory clips without a laugh track.
Oh,
Those are,
yeah.
Yeah,
those
they're
are like brutal.
Yeah, they're just like, okay, they're just sitting there staring at each
They
other.
literally just like pause after they make jokes, and it's so weird.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Anyway,
it-
I liked this episode.
Yeah, this episode was fun. It was funny because, the original joke, like you mentioned, Hyde, is that Crichton mentioned, he brings it up in poor taste, but in this, it's his head that has his behavior chip turned off.
Mm-hmm.
So he still kind of like does these things. Obviously, they didn't choose to go to 1963.
Right.
But yeah, they're there, and so this Crichton now kind of has to follow through with that idea that he pitched all those years ago.
Yeah. They do appreciate timelines in this show, and I do like that about it.
Yeah, I mean, in the episode, they definitely address the proper sci-fi concerns.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue is, like, over the course of the years, they don't adhere to those same rules. Because, again, the episode needs these, so they kind of explain it, and they use those, and then they kind of do something else the next time that you need to use that device.
Cool. All right. I guess that kind of covers the time travel kind
Yeah,
of individually.
that covers all the episodes
Yeah.
pretty well, I think.
Would you want to experience any of this time travel? Either any of these
Oh,
three?
yeah. I think the stasis leak, maybe not, because, I don't know, if I was Lister, I want to do it just to see if I could.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of so specific. It's locked to the ship, But the time slides, yes, that'd be awesome.
Time size would be a lot
Yeah,
of fun.
absolutely.
You can go anywhere.
The nice thing
anytime.
about this show, there are definitely consequences, and we see that in Ticket to Ride, but, there are, like, the time slides, there aren't really negative consequences.
Yeah.
So, I do want to mention, I meant to mention this when we talked about Stasis Leak, about how it's kind of I guess kind of in time slides too, like advice from your future self. Of like, I wanted to mention something, and then I also wanted to pose a question, and so maybe I'll ask the question first, and you can think about it while I mention what I'm going to say.
Sure.
So if you were to run into, and we've talked about this before, but in this context, if you were to run into your past self at a certain like moment in time, like something that you would take a picture of, and you could give them advice, what would you say? That stuff. So think about it. And then what I wanted to mention is there's a show, kind of similar, kind of not. There's a web show that I don't think it's on anymore, but it's called Dating Advice for My Future Self. It's kind of, it just like reminded me of this, but basically in that show, there's a there's a phone app that if you get it like somehow like your future self is programmed to have it too, and so you're kind of like connected to your future, and that person like gives you dating advice, like date this person, don't date this person, whatever. It's really interesting, and if you're into that, I do recommend watching it. Fran Kranz from Dollhouse is in it. It's good. You would probably like it, but anyway, it just reminded me of that in a weird way of like giving your past self advice. So I don't know, what, did you guys come up with anything?
Yeah, I would definitely go back to when I was working security, but not having to pay rent, because I was living with family, and say, yo, don't spend all your extra money, just spend it like right now towards your like college loans while you're like in forbearance, because you can still pay them while you're in forbearance. And I'm like, just do it, because like you have no interest coming, like just like keep paying it off. Like you will literally cut down like a year, like maybe even 2 of debt from college. It's like, just do it, man. Just do it. None of this money, you're not saving in this money, so just spend it for something that's going to make your life a little easier in the future.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard. I don't have anything I'm trying to change, you know?
Yeah, it's not necessarily for the purpose of change.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of like where I'm at. And I got here by doing what I did, so.
There you go.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I might want to, like, tell myself to have, like, a communications major instead of, like, specifically film studies.
Yeah, something big like that. I would say maybe, like,
you know?
think more about what do you want to do with your life as opposed to
yeah.
just saying, yeah, math is fine.
Math is fine.
I'll go
Here
to
You're
school for
stuck
math.
now. Yeah. If I had to say anything, it'd probably be that. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
I would definitely experience this time travel. Definitely the time slides.
Yeah, the time device in and of itself is pretty powerful too. You can go any space and time. They could have just gone to Earth when they left, after the ship left, and be totally fine. They would solve everything the show's trying to do and get back to Earth, but, you know, they didn't.
Any closing sets you guys wanted to mention?
It's very 90s. Very, very 90s.
Yeah, it's like future 90s. Like when he's talking, when they're back on the ship and Stasis, like, they're wearing future clothes, but it's just like 80s clothes that are shiny.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is very.
Which was just like just a little bit higher in the luminance level, since almost all 80s clothes was shiny.
Yeah, that's true.
What I do love about the show is because the film is kind of old. Like when the cat wears like shiny stuff, you can see like the trails in the film of like his shiny clothes. I always kind of appreciated that, kind of like that shows the age. I don't know. It's a weird thing that I see and I appreciate.
No, it's true. It would be weird to see the show like Blu-rayed, because then you would see all the little imperfections.
Yeah.
And you're like, no.
Right. It's kind of like in like the first season of Doctor Who. It's very like you can tell the difference of the quality of it.
Yeah.
Versus like Matt Smith is like high res.
Right.
You know. Yeah. So I appreciate that.
No, it's true.
Kind of like gives it a different vibe.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does.
It's all part of the package, you know.
Yeah. So anything else you guys noticed about the show?
Well, I mean, I was definitely surprised that like there was an early 90s British show made for predominantly, I'm assuming, a white audience with 2 black principal characters. It's like, I honestly was a little surprised. I was like, oh, wow, like, they're both black. There's 2 black characters on here.
Yeah.
You don't have just like a token, like Katz is not like the token black dude who's going to say funny jokes.
Yeah, you're so right. He easily could have. And like, it did, I did, and I think I said this in the beginning, I did feel like he was a little bit stereotyped a little bit.
A little bit.
But Dave wasn't as much.
Right.
Yeah,
and they're
Dave
all
is just a regular Joe.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of stereotypes when you think about it. I mean, Rimmer's very much the stereotypical uptight British guy.
Yeah.
And then, like, you know, he's very much a Cockney type dude.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's like, it's even in a show where it's like, his, like, main love interest is, like, a white woman. Like, dude, like, when Hitch came out, they recast Cameron Diaz because they didn't think America was going to be comfortable with Will Smith and Cameron Diaz in a relationship. So I'm like, the fact that early 90s British TV was like, yeah, let's do this. I'm like, man, that's
true.
So weird. Our country's so weird.
Yeah, it is weird. I just wish there were more women in the show, but you're right. I do appreciate two black characters on the show.
That's true.
In a cast of 4.
And the last note I had that I thought about was, I wonder if the JFK fixation comes from BBC. One of the famous stories is the same day Kennedy was assassinated, Doctor Who premiered, the original Doctor Who. And so it actually bombed ratings-wise. It didn't do super well. And, like, people kind of forgot about Doctor Who. It took a while for Doctor Who to get popular because everyone was so enraptured with what had happened with Kennedy. And I always wonder, anytime, like, British people bring up Kennedy, is like, BBC brings up Kennedy, is like, is this revenge?
Yeah, right. We're going to utilize this now, make money from it. That's funny. Okay, so what other episodes would you recommend for people? Anything kind of stand out?
You know, the show isn't that much long of a watch. I mean, it's, you know, there's it's so many years it's been on the air, but there aren't that many episodes in a season. So the original 8 seasons are pretty compact, I would say, relative to a show that's going 8 seasons. Mm-hmm. So if you want to just see the show, go for it. You know, as far as time travel episodes go, we kind of covered the big ones. I guess I mentioned earlier that he's his own father.
Oh yeah.
And it's kind of like the episode's called Ouroboros, or Ouroboros. I think that's like the snake that ate its own head.
Oh.
And I forget how he gets back to the past, but I think he's the baby of him and Kachansky in that. I think it's in the same. I think it's in season 7 or something like that. I don't know. But so they use other time travel stuff. There's also an episode where they go to a version of Earth where it's going backwards in time, and they're still going forwards, and it's pretty funny how they like have a lot of backwards footage, and they get like a reverse bar fight that they, you know, it's pretty interesting. They do a lot of other weird sci-fi things. That's pretty cool. So I don't know, if you just want to see sci-fi, I would say the whole show. If you're curious about time travel, there's other episodes that use it. So.
Cool.
You know.
I like that backwards. That's fun.
Yeah.
Okay. So, final reviews? Yeah?
Yes.
I'll start. I feel like I never start. The show as a whole, as I said, I've only seen these 3 episodes. I do like it. I wouldn't necessarily want to sit down and watch all of it. Some of the humor is just, it's tiresome for me. But I do like the characters, and you're right. I do appreciate the diversity of the cast, just not gender diversity, but that's okay. It is what it is. Not every show can be gender diverse, I suppose. But yeah, I guess overall, from what I've seen, I'd give it a 6 out of 10. I think, yeah.
Yeah. Like it's hard for me to be unbiased in this review for the show in general because I've been watching it almost my entire life. This might have been the first show that I actually loved. Because my sisters got me hooked onto it pretty young. It's definitely one of the first shows that I was like, oh yeah, this is like one of my favorite shows. So I don't know. It's hard for me to kind of be fair. So I'm just gonna say, as a general, I think the show is an 8.5 for me, just because if it's on, I can just have a stream of it on. I've seen all the episodes, even if I don't know the reference or whatever, or the joke's kind of juvenile. It's still kind of, it definitely hits the nostalgic chord for me. So I can even look past those kind of jokes that, even if I didn't find them funny at the time, I still have memories of the episode and all that stuff. So, and after season 8, it's kind of where it wanes for me a little bit. But in my mind, the original run of the show, I think it's pretty solid.
Cool.
As a show, again, I've only seen the 3 episodes we saw here, so that you have to keep that in mind. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was, it's definitely one of those shows, particularly when I was growing up and they said come on PBS, I had noticed it or recognized it. I probably would have watched a few episodes. It's just kind of like one of those things. It's like, yeah, it's a very British show, but it is funny and it is engaging and the characters are interesting and it's such an interesting concept. Yeah, so I think overall I got to give it like a 7.5 because it's while I can definitely tell that like not every episode's gonna be a winner. I mean, at least it's not like episode after episode after episode. It's pretty compact, and that seems kind of cool, and it's different. So yeah, 7.5.
Cool. So time travel, I have to be a little bit harsh just because of how sloppy they are with the rules.
Yeah.
Is a little rough for me to kind of say that the other stuff kind of counteracts that. But, they do different ways of using time travel, so there's definitely points for that. They do wrap it up by episode. I just kind of wish that the show itself was a little bit more consistent. So, that being said, I think 4.5 out of 10. It feels a little harsh, but...
I mean, I was going to go a little bit lower.
There is duplication, and that's great. And there are some things that they do explain, but I think there's too much kind of sloppiness and just kind of explaining away by saying, nah, blah, 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 you don't really care, blah, 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 whatever, who gives a shit. It just is what it is. It's really hard for me to kind of give points for that kind of an explanation. So yeah, 4.5 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I'm right around there. I'm going to go with 4 because, for me, it's like, I never really thought about it until I was critically thinking about this show for this podcast. And I'm like, yeah, they don't really, sometimes in the episode they have explanations, but episode to episode, they don't really stick to those explanations. And it's fine because they're a sitcom. They don't want to have to harp on those the hard sci-fi rules too much. And yeah, they do kind of have fun with it. So whenever they do use time travel, it's for a comedic purpose, or they want to get them in front of Hitler or to assassinate JFK. So there's like a reason for them to do it, at least comedically. So and the show does use it for more than just the 3 episodes, but these are the hardest like storylines that involve time travel. But yeah, the inconsistencies and as far as our podcast goes, we need to have some standards. So I think I'll have to go with a 4.
Cool. I was gonna go with 4, but just so I'm gonna be different, I'm just gonna bump it up a little bit to a 5 just to even out the average.
Sure.
Just because it's like I agree with everything you guys are saying about the time travel, but it definitely is a show where the time travel is a feature, not a bug.
Yes.
And I appreciate that. And I agree, everything changes from week to week, it seems, of how they do time travel. But, that's kind of the sitcom way. Like, usually, unless it's something really big happens, like a character leaves or something, everything kind of gets pseudo-reset the next episode. So, yeah, 5 out of 10.
Cool. All right, so our next episode is my final choice, and I have chosen the show Once Upon a Time, which is very recent, and I'm sure you've probably heard of it if you live in the world, because it was everywhere. But the basic synopsis is a young woman with a troubled past is drawn to a small town in Maine where fairy tales are to be believed. Okay, basically Jennifer Morrison from House is sent, or she goes to this town, and all these people are actually fairy tale characters, but they don't remember who they are, and they've been cursed. It's kind of that's the plot of season 1. That kind of leads to other things. The cool thing about this show, 2 things that I really loved. 1, it was created by 2 of the writers from Lost, so there's a lot of Lost references throughout the show.
Actors too.
Yeah, a lot of actors, a lot of references I really, really appreciated. Like, a lot of really subtle references, like the candy bar, and Regina lives in house 108, and things like that they're really subtle.
Easter eggs.
But I appreciated those for sure. And it's a fun show. It travels through realms. There is some time travel, so we'll be covering 2 episodes. It's kind of a 2-parter arc. They go together. So Season 3, Episode 21 and Episode 22, which is Snowdrifts, and then There's No Place Like Home, which is when Emma and Hook mistakenly change how Snow and Charming meet, and it's a little bit Back to the Future-ish, because she's their kid, so if they don't meet, she's not going to exist. Basically,
Yeah.
it's very Back to the Future. So
Yeah, and we're also going to mention something in the last season too. So if you haven't seen it, don't want to be a spoiler. We're going to mention it a little bit, but
there's a couple scenes that we'll mention from season 7, which is the final season. But yeah, the show as a whole, I think I was like the only human being in the entire planet who actually like stuck with this show from day one and finished through the finale episode this year. I know, Hyde, you said you watched part of season 1.
I started season 1, then I kind of lost track of it, and then I tried to come back in when they introduced Elsa, because Elsa is Bae, and I tried to come back, and I just couldn't do it. I was just too out of the loop. It was too confusing. There was CGI trolls that I couldn't do it.
It's definitely not one of those shows you can just jump into. That's for sure.
Right.
Yeah. I've only ever seen the episodes that Jen watches over the time that we've been together, and
which is not that bad.
Yeah, and I've seen a couple when she's rewatching them, but I wasn't sitting down watching them with her, so I just know it from Jen.
Yeah, so it'll be mostly me talking about the show, but that's okay. I enjoy it. It definitely is not the best show. It's not even like probably my top 10 favorite, which actually I'm doing right now on my Instagram, so I can tell you for sure it's not in my top 10 favorite. But it's a fun show, and it really tells these fairy tale stories in different ways, which I think is a really fascinating kind of theme for a show. So kind of especially when the first thing was like, who is that person? I think it's that person. Like David Anders, who's in like literally every show ever, is in the show.
Yes, he really is.
And his character was someone who, like, even after the curse was broken, no one knew who he was. And I had like such a strong theory that he was a Wizard of Oz, but he ended up not being, which I was still bummed about. He was Dr. Frankenstein, which
he's
not
a
as cool. He was well, no, he's the Doctor. He wasn't.
He wasn't Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
Oh.
I know.
So close.
It was such a bummer. Anyway, so if you're a fan of Once Upon a Time, that'll be fun. We all picked 3 very different shows for our final kind of.
And we also all chose shows.
We did all choose shows, but it's also, if they were movies, we would have done them already.
That's true.
Just because, by the time we got to the last movies, we were kind of bottom of the barrel. So.
Yeah. And this show went on for 8 seasons, or
7?
7, yeah.
Okay.
And the last season, a lot of the cast left. So, like, Jennifer Morrison's not it. They, like, make a guest appearance in, like, 1 or 2 episodes, but it's a totally different cast. There's a few people who, like, stayed. So there's, like, 3 core people, but it's totally different. I mean, not totally different. It's the same concept, but it's a different thing, and it just wasn't the same. And so I'm glad they didn't drag it out.
Gotcha.
And just ended it, and happily ever after ending, because obviously the show's called Once Upon a Time. So anyway, that was a long roundabout way of saying those are the episodes we're going to do. That show is streaming on Netflix, so if you wanted to watch those before or whatever we record that, feel free. Okay, our social media, we are at Time Travel Trio on Twitter and on Instagram, and we are the Time Travel Trio podcast on Facebook, if you'd like to follow us on any of those. If you would like to subscribe to us, we would appreciate it, and we are on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. If you rate us or comment on those too, we would appreciate hearing from you. And personal, I am at Jen Marlis on Twitter and Instagram, if you'd like to follow me.
And I'm at Foreman in Space on those.
I'm at Robinson is Hyde.
And
with that,
we are out of
time.